Hello, and thank you for joining the Nautical Institute's webinar commemorating the Day of the Seafarer 2020. And it's a wonderful opportunity to be here with a panel that I'll introduce you to very shortly. But I think it's important to recognise this initiative started by the IMO following the adoption of the Manila Amendments in 2010. So it's a great privilege to be here so many years later and adopting this important day in the calendar every year. But I'm particularly thrilled to be joined by an expert panel today. Our president, Captain Nick Nash, seagoing master, just coming to the end of 2 years as president of the Nautical Institute. Throughout that period, he's demonstrated his enthusiasm and commitment and interest to the ship handling of large cruise vessels, and also the special commitment that he's shown to the development of young seafarers. Also on the panel is Gillian Jackson, Director of JCJ Consulting, a specialist in VTS activities, and the voice of the Nautical Institute at IALA. But most importantly, she's also our Senior Vice President and will be taking over the presidency early next month. We're also joined from Hong Kong by Captain Vikrants. Malhotra, thank you for joining us. Senior position held with Anglo Eastern, but also a long-serving member with the Nautical Institute in the branch, and one of our key speakers at the annual general meeting held in Hong Kong last year. A very warm welcome to you. Deirdre Lane, Fellow of the Nautical Institute, Harbour Master in Ireland, thank you for joining us, but also Chair of the Nautical Institute branch. A very keen interest in welfare issues and spends a lot of time sharing her commitment with the students at the National Maritime College of Ireland. Welcome. And finally, Kuba Savansky, Secretary General of Intermanager, a company that serves the needs of all companies and organisations involved with the management and crewing of ships. Kuba, you're very welcome, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Before we get going with the panel's thoughts, I'd just like to ask David Petrayko to take us through a few housekeeping notes as we start this Seafarers are Key Workers Day of the Seafarer commemoration. David.
Thanks, John. I'll remain faceless for the moment, but I just want to let everybody know that this is an interactive webinar. Although your cameras and your microphones will not be in use, you will have your keyboard and you can ask questions through that. If you notice on your control panel, you have this little white arrow in an orange field that expands or contracts the control panel. When it's expanded, you have a number of other options. You have a questions box here. Feel free to, at any time, to submit a question there, and I will try to feed it through to the panel in due course. If you could, please keep it short and concise. That helps me no end. There's also some handouts there. There's the statement from the Secretary General of the IMO and some other material. Feel free to download those and enjoy. Hold on. Okay, after the webinar, you will have a chance to give a little bit of feedback. It only takes a couple minutes and it really helps us to grow these webinars and be better at them. A few hours after the webinar is over, you will also get an email thanking you for your attendance, and there will be a link to an attendance certificate for your CPD, Continued Professional Development. So on that, I'll hand back to you, John, and we can get started.
David, thank you very much. Captain Nick, let's start with you. 10 years into commemorating the Day of the Seafarer, what does it mean for you as a serving ship's captain?
Well, John and fellow panelists and NI members and guests to the International Seafarers Day. 10 years, well, what does it mean to me? As I've always said, I think that the merchant service operates in the background. We always do. We just get on with things very quietly and efficiently in the background, and nobody really knows that we're there. I mean, my neighbour still thinks I sleep in a hammock. They've got no idea of the seafarer's job out there. The good thing about the International Seafarers Day is that we're very good at telling our own people, our own seafarers, our own organizations, how good we are and what a great job we do. But we're very bad at getting it out there to everybody else. And I think that the International Seafarers Day at least makes everybody else aware of what the merchant service does. We're the silent service in the background making the world go round. Those Amazon parcels with a smiley face that are arriving everywhere at the moment are due to the fact that we've got people out there at the moment still working in these very difficult conditions. I mean, even The Economist has an article, 2 articles this week on seafarers because of this awareness that the merchant service is keeping everything going. And so I think that in these particularly straight times at the moment, with people like me stuck at home, but my colleagues out there working away, it's great that we've got these sort of webinars and continuing to make people aware of what we do. But it's not just ourselves that we need to talk about this to. We need to get it out there. And this is where the International Seafarers Day really does push out our message, that we're in the background, we're doing a job, and we just want you to know that we're doing this, and also gives everybody at sea, you know, a slightly nice platform to operate on, that, you know, people are aware of what we do. And I think this is what's so good about these webinars, but particularly the International Seafarers Day. And I'm very proud to be a seafarer. John.
Okay. Nick, thanks very much. We'll come back to you with 1 or 2 specific questions as we go through the webinar. But Gillian, in Australia at the moment, can you tell us about your perspectives on this important day in the calendar?
Well, it's very interesting because I did do some thinking about what does it mean? What does the word seafarer mean to me? Because many images come to mind, don't they? The dedicated professionals working on the jobs, the changeable environment, and my own days as a seafarer, those lovely moonlit nights, the sunrises, the sunsets, the polar bears, the icebergs. But things probably are not quite exactly like that. It's a bit my rose-colored glasses, a bit of hindsight. We do know that the Seafarers Happiness Index that was released in January, so just before this whole COVID thing hit, it showed a decrease in positivity of the satisfaction amongst seafarers already at that time. But a bit ironically, perhaps, it showed an increase in the satisfaction of those in the cruise industry. So then COVID-19 came along, and we saw an update to that special COVID-19 edition of the index. This growing sense of isolation that is there, concerns over being exposed to the virus, the policies that demand zero contact, and this inability to get shore leave. So now we've been hearing about all of the negative sides of what's happening and what it is to be a seafarer. Whereas I have these memories of, you know, perhaps a bit in hindsight that it's not realistic, but it was actually just an absolutely amazing opportunity to start my career in this industry. We know that the role of the seafarer is crucial for the transportation of goods, all of the medical equipment and more. And as Nick has said, it is basically that unsung concept of the heroes of the sea. We have that. I feel that the role in the maritime industry as a whole is not recognized. So just as Nick was saying that his neighbor thinks that maybe he sleeps in a hammock, we have so many people that don't understand that there are the seafarers, there's a maritime pilot, there's a harbor master, there's VTS operators. This needs, I think, to be out beyond our own echo chamber. We need to get that word out. And back in March, I started my video series called Maritime Matters, the Maritime Professional during COVID-19, specifically to try and get that message out beyond the echo chamber. We're really good at telling each other how good we are. We need to have the rest of the world know what a wonderful industry this is to work in. Through one of my contacts, actually, on a Princess cruise ship, I had the opportunity to receive some specific words on what it means to be a seafarer from one of the bosuns on the Golden Princess, and he's agreed that I can read these out. He says, "This is a year for sure we will remember. Any possible and unexpected challenges we had to face, we did. We are resilient to any adversity, and we were taught or we have learned to stand tall in front of them. We are looking forward to see the magic that this marvelous job still will give us all." And that's really wonderful words from a seafarer on today, the Day of the Seafarer.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Gillian. Very much appreciated, and some poignant words, I think, on many levels. So thank you. Captain Vikrant, would you like to please share your thoughts on the Day of the Seafarer and what it means to you?
Yeah, I mean, as said, very well said by Nick and by Gillian. I mean, it's extremely important, the work being done by the seafarers. They touch every single individual's lives in some way or the other. I mean, carrying all the trade, the toothpaste, everything is brought on to them by the seafarers. And in this particular year, them not enjoying what the rest of the world has enjoyed, or being close to their families, I mean, that's something which they're missing. So that's and medical care. Our expectancy from the seafarer is that they day in, day out do their jobs perfectly fine. They go into port, they may have deaths, they may have births, they may have very emotional things happening back home, but that should not affect them. They should very professionally continue doing their jobs. So it's very difficult times for the seafarers, and it's not just the support. I think they need to be saluted for the jobs which they're doing right now. They're doing fantastically well. Having said that, we still have a lot of work to be done to sort of take care of their reliefs and other things, and that these are the challenges which we have, which of course we need to work on together. Yep.
Okay, Vikrant, thank you very much indeed. And let's move to Deirdre. Deirdre, along association with the career, you're working as a harbour master at the moment. What are your perspectives on the Day of the Seafarer?
Thanks, John. I suppose for me, IMO Day of the Seafarer has been growing traction year on year. It's been getting bigger and bigger. They've enhanced their social media campaign. We saw it really ramped up for last year's gender equality theme. This year's theme, Seafarers are Key Workers, has taken on a whole new level of importance as COVID-19 outbreak continues. So I think all seafarers, and that's port operations as well, harbours, pilots, everybody, fishermen, they've continued to do what they do best, and that is get on with the job no matter what is thrown their way. As mariners, I suppose we always hear the quote, or we use the quote, 90% of the world's trade is carried by sea. But we all watched on TV as people scrambled around supermarkets at the beginning of the pandemic buying goods. But how many of those people were actually aware of the key workers that work long stints at sea, often missing very important family events, milestones, and the commitments that they put into the job? Seafarers, like all of us, they've had the same everybody's had the same COVID-19 worries, but they've had their worries away from home, family, friends. Many, as we know, are stuck on board long past the end of their contract due to travel restrictions. Many can't get the headspace that you get from shore leave. And those that are at home are worried about having a ship to come back to. Many seafarers that I've spoken to are actually proud, very proud to be on board and happy to be in their own ship's bubble. But they carry a huge fear of a breakout being brought on board by someone outside of the ship's crew. So perhaps now is the time to look to technology to try and reduce ships' visits as much as reasonably possible.
Deirdre, thank you very much. You raised some really important points, and I'm sure we'll come back to those in the question and answer session as well. But before we do that, let's ask Kuba to share his views, please. Kuba.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. I was reflecting on my own career. It's 35 years since I went to sea. And I went to sea because I started sailing on a yacht and tall ships and everything. And I thought, and now I'm still thinking 35 years down the line, and if I could retract the steps, I would definitely go back and do the same. I would probably be wiser. It's different times now than it was 35 years ago, but I really love it. I can't be without. And many of us, and I suppose not many seafarers on board of the ship are watching us today because we still have a problem with internet when at sea. But those of you who are at home now and people from the office, I'm sure you got the same sensation as I do. You spend at home 2-3 months and you really want to go back because that's where we belong. We belong to sea. We probably struggle to understand some people ashore with their faults, their ideas and their concerns, and vice versa. A lot of people would not swap the jobs with what we do. because they can't imagine us being away without internet, without social media, and so on and so forth. But I think I'm okay with that. And I think I must have done something good, because my son is at sea now as well, and he's enjoying it. And John, you know him because he worked in Nautical Institute briefly, and he wasn't very good at a job ashore. That's not what he is made for, and neither am I. I don't want to be 9 to 5. I'd rather be at sea and do whatever I need to do. Now, my predecessors already spoke about the COVID-19, and no doubt this webinar will be dominated by questions and everything. What I am seeing in position where I'm sitting is that we probably, as usual, have two types of people. And ex-seafarers who are now populating office are usually doers. And I'm delighted. If you've got a moment, go to Intermanager website. At the top, you will see Maritime's Champions Club. And you will see that for last 3 months now we have been changing crew, because we took it as a challenge. Oh, it's not easy. Flights aren't cancelled. Some countries are in lockdown. But many of us seafarers do not take no as an answer. If we can't fly Poles to Poland, we fly them to Berlin and then bus them. The same Ukrainians. If we can't do that, we will get them to Minsk. And then, you know, you are a seafarer. If it's broken, then you will fix it one way or the other. You cannot just put your hands up in the air and say, oh, gee, what can I do now? We are the guys who are actually working and doing it. And a lot of people don't understand that, people ashore, because they've never been to see it. They've never done what you guys have done. I'm very proud, immensely proud to be a seafarer. I continue going to sea whenever I can, and I don't think I will stop. So my message to you is, let's stick together. It's a very challenging time, but let's remember it's tomorrow. And you don't want to be ashamed what we have done today when we are talking about the tomorrow. So proud of being a seafarer, and thank you for listening to me. I will now switch my camera off and hand over to John.
Well, please, Kuba, leave your camera on, and I'd like to invite the other panel members to come back to the table, because we have had quite a number of questions racing into us already. And you made the point, Kuba, there, and as a colleague of mine said to me, I didn't choose the sea, rather the sea chose me. And maybe that's the mark of it being a way of life, and as well as a career. So thank you. But clearly, we've touched on it a little bit as we go through there. And Captain Nick, you're from a sector that's been particularly severely impacted by the COVID-19 and the cruise sector. Can you we can see this global crisis around crew changes and so on, highlighted by the Pope and a number of seafarers welfare organisations and so on. What are your observations on the issues that are being faced, and how we're able to deal with those?
Well, when we started finding that we lost all our passengers, we still had about 105 ships with crew on them. In my own group, we had 25 ships. We initially tried to consolidate a couple of ships as ferry ships, and had ships meeting up with each other and transferring crew across. And then we got a couple of ships full of Filipino, Indonesian and Indian crew, and sailed round Cape of Good Hope to the Philippines. And now we've got 22 ships anchored off Manila trying to get the crew off. We've succeeded in getting 16,000 crew members off. We've still got another 15,000 to go. It's a very slow process. We basically repatriated about 85% of the crew we need to repatriate at a cost of about $46 million so far. So when people say that the shipping companies are not spending money, it's a question of that's wrong. We are spending money. We're just having bureaucratic holdups. Generally, we're also having administration problems trying to get crew in. Some of the areas have been closed off despite the IMO protocol for transfers. I don't think anybody's read the 65 pages, but we're getting there and things are getting better, but we've still got a lot of crew that are not at home. We're trying now to relieve the technical crews as well that need to stay on board the ships to keep them operational. We've got a flight coming out from Europe to Manila. It was to be at the end of this week, but now due to delays of visas and testing, we're trying to get 350 crew officers out to Manila, maybe towards the very first week in July. But things are happening, and they're starting to happen a bit quicker now, but we have had issues. In fact, we begin to think it would have been quicker to bring our ship to UK and fly the crew out of London back to Manila and Indonesia. But this is the way we've gone. And talking to one of the captains, it's not just a question of dealing with repatriation and the crew problems and everything. He's got 22 ships anchored in a fairly small area off Manila there, with squalls coming in, thunderstorms as well. So you've got all the seafarer problems, plus the problems of trying to repatriate crew, keep the crew motivated. So it's a huge issue outside our normal operating routine. And again, we've adapted well. The seafarers out there, as Gillians bosun on the Golden Princess has said, this is our golden hour. And as one of our captains said, we're gladiators out there. He called his crew gladiators. And they're doing that very well, adapting and just getting on with it. There's not too many complaints coming in. We're just dealing with it and trying to get crew repatriated just as quickly as we can. And it's not going to be a quick fix. And hopefully, once we've got them all home again, we've got to get them back up again to get them on the ships, to get the ships back out again. So it's a rolling process. And this is where shore management have come into their own and been coordinating the ships day to day, hour to hour, things change. I mean, we had ships going down to Puerto Vallarta in Mexico. We had a charter flight coming in, all arranged for the next day for crew transfers. And then suddenly there was a bureaucratic change. No transfers, no aircraft in, and so we have to change. So we're living on the hoof all the time, but things are getting better, and it's not all doom and gloom. And as I said in my focus article, I think this time we should use this as a springboard to see how we can do this in the future. And as Deirdre says, the less chance we have of people coming on board with electronic paperwork, blockchain, and possibly remote pilotage in some areas, that will help us, and we can use this as a springboard to the future, not all doom and gloom. But repatriations for crew are happening, and it's starting to move forward now with things like this. And as I said, the economists taking notice. People are aware that we need to move crew around.
Okay, well, lovely. Thank you for that. I'm sure we may well return to some detail later on. But Captain Vikrant, from your perspective there, we've got some negative press going on around the industry. We've got a whole bunch of the next generation of seafarers we want to attract into the industry. How does an organisation like yours ensure that you've got access to the right talent? And are you seeing the expressions of interest in careers at sea still?
I think currently our actions to repatriate, I mean, our efforts have to be focused towards, the safety aspect on the ships is running well. The mental wellness of the crew is taken care of. Their repatriation, safe travel, their passage to and from the vessels is taken care of. We need to take care of the present to be able to attract the best in the future. So we need to focus on the task at hand and take care of our people. And I think that should hold good stead for our future employments.
Okay, thank you. Another point which Nick touched on there briefly was the increase in autonomy and automation and so on. Gillian, from your perspective, are we going to have mariners tomorrow, or is it all going to be done on a desktop and an iPhone? Other brands are available, of course.
That's a very good question, actually, and I do get it often. One of my roles in IALA is I chair a working group that's dealing with the development of digital technologies, and everyone's saying, well, we are developing too many digital technologies. It's going to take over. I think what Nick was mentioning is very true. We can actually make technology work better for us. We have an opportunity, such as these webinars, I mean, where from Ireland to Australia, so covering the entire globe in one webinar with the technology. So technology has lots of opportunities. And I think that's really what we're seeing as we're looking to the future. There is this discussion on autonomous surface ships, maritime autonomous surface ships. And there's a difference between autonomy and automatic. We have lots of automated systems already, and we have a lot of activity around digital developments. But it actually provides us with an opportunity to look at the future skill sets for mariners, maritime professionals. What are their skill sets going to be? In one of the upcoming articles in Seaways, I talk about the new development of a maritime informatics officer, because we're now moving into this area. Someone needs to understand what is blockchain, what it's doing, what is this requirement for cybersecurity, how are we getting data back and forth, and even into an environment where we might see into the future some of these domestic vessels, for example, with that might be fully autonomous. There still is going to be a maritime role ashore, and that maritime expertise is not going to go away. I think we're seeing an evolution of an industry which rightly has its own opportunity to evolve, and we are now at the beginning of this, and it's the world is our oyster. We have an opportunity to make a real change in how we work and making use of technology that supports people. So human-centered design, technology to assist what we do, not technology for technology's sake. Where it's useful and helpful, as Nick has said, we have this opportunity to help keep the bubble by doing electronic exchange of documents. That's a fantastic step forward. But where is that going to end? It's still always people, and we don't know. But from a mariner's point of view and a young person looking to come into this industry, it is so exciting because there's so much happening right now. You've got that tradition and that history, but you also have the new technology and the new developments.
So thank you. So we have a brave new dawn ahead of us. But we've also got some real challenges today, Kuba, and you know, as one of our audience has observed, for 40 years we've seen slave-like conditions get worse and worse, bit ponies, you might say, in the global labour market for seafarers. How long is it going to be that seafarers have these hugely extended hours, extended tours of duty, 90 to 100 hours, and the norm under STCW 2010, almost in conflict with the MLC? What are your views on seafarers' responsibilities, how they respond to that, and you know, as an industry, how do we knock on that door?
Thanks for this question, and it's funny because it's 10 years now since Manila, and I was in Manila in 2010, and I was really pushing very hard against Danes and Dutch. I'll repeat that, I mean against Danes and Dutch, who were not having it. So these are the European countries which were pushing for 90 hours. They didn't want what we were proposing, and those of you who remember in Manila, we were very, very close to push the hours of rest to be civilized. And then I remember the German chairperson said, guys, you haven't reached the agreement, go back and come back with the proper solution. And the proper solution is what we've got at the moment. Do I have a crystal ball in front of me? No, I don't. I have no idea how long it will take before we get to maybe 70 hours a week or 45 hours a week. No idea. Australia is working very hard. We know where the friends are. We know who wants to have a civilized hours, if you wish, and we also know who doesn't. And it is a political game. There is a lot of discussion behind the scenes and people trying to persuade each other. So, John, no, I cannot give you an answer. Then it will be 17th of July, 2027. I haven't got a clue, sorry.
Well, we'll take that as your best guess, but thank you for that. Listen, I think that sort of links us to welfare issues, and Deirdre, we've seen a lot of concerns raised about the general welfare issues for seafarers because of COVID-19. Maybe before that even, that, you know, with the restrictions on shore leave and import times being so much under pressure. But I just wonder, what are your observations in that context and the welfare side of things?
Thanks, John. Yeah, just on the welfare side of things, the job is tough enough, and now COVID-19 has also exacerbated all the little things that you look forward to. You have your leave date in mind, you have shore leave to look forward to. So COVID-19 has made everything a lot more difficult. What can the seafarers do on board? Back to basics, back to the comfort things, bring it right back to eat well, sleep well, exercise, food. But one avenue that members or Nautical Institute members can avail of is to lean on their branch. And I suppose on this day, the seafarer, and in these very unsettling times, all the members can link in with their branches. And for the first time ever, many branches are holding the very first webinars. Ireland branch just had theirs a few weeks ago. and you can join in from anywhere, whether you're at home or away. And listen to your fellow, listen to your colleagues, listen to a familiar accent, listen to people that you were in college with, and more importantly, have your say. Feed that into the branch so that the branch can then feed these issues up to HQ and generate a wider picture of how seafarers are coping during COVID-19.
Thank you, Deirdre. And there've been a couple of very recent developments. One of which we've seen direct interventions by, well, the ones that I've seen in the media anyway, have been by the government in the UK and by the government in Australia through their port state control inspections. And they have, because of expired contracts and so on, they've regarded those ships as non-compliant and have detained them. Kuba, do you want to give us your perspective on that, and where do we go from there? What are the knock-on implications of that?
Well, I'll do sandwich. So I'll do the very first positive thing, and UK government was always very good, I have to admit. Throughout the COVID, from the 23rd of March, UK government has been working with seafarers all the time. London, Aberdeen airports were open. We could have carried out the crew changes, so it was good. A lot of ferry services could be relieved as well. So UK, thumbs up. UK was one of the leading countries. Germany was superb. Berlin was flying all the time. Amsterdam was flying very well. Holland, thumbs up. Now Australia, we've got a problem, Australia, because Australia was saying, not in my backyard. So yes, you can send people home, but don't bring anybody in. And now Australia has a cheek to go and say to me, ship manager, you are wrong. You extended contract of your people. Of course I did, because I could not replace them because you didn't allow me to fly. That's not nice. Singapore is the same. United Arab Emirates, terrible. Fujairah and Dubai. We can't do crew changes. On one hand, the government says, yes, you can. Then you go to the agents, and agents are telling you a completely different story because the border control does not allow. So this is where the industry had to get together. 25 NGOs on the 23rd of March sat down together and have been working week on week, showing what listening to each other to start with, and then coming up with solutions and trying to persuade everybody to be a part of a solution, not a problem. So John, this is my answer to your question. Some are self-inflicted. I think it's very, very cheeky of Australia to do what they do. On the other hand, if I was a seafarer on board of this vessel, I'll be delighted, because if Australia gives the ship a yellow card, then hopefully they will accept the fact then crew will be allowed to go home from this particular port. But people have to understand, if you want to go home, then somebody else has to come on board first to relieve those who are going. So it's not just the last person switches the lights off, thank you very much. I wonder what Australia would do with all those unmanned ships anchored there and no humans on board. They will be first to scream and say, no, 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 you can't have it, in case they drift into your lovely waters or ports. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Vikrant, I mean, you're managing some really challenging issues on the ground of crews needing to be repatriated and contracts perhaps being extended. How are you dealing with that? What are the key issues that you're facing?
I think primarily travel restrictions, as we've spoken about. Several of the countries, they still require visas. Like the US requires a C1D visa, and many other places we need visas, and the consulates are all shut. So there are a few countries who do permit e-visas, but not many. So it starts from processing visas to the travel restrictions. I mean, our key crewing sources are India, Philippines, Ukraine, and China, and apart from their nationals, the others cannot sign on and off there. So it's a major issue in that sense. The administrations, they need to permit travel, visa-free travel for seafarers. They should permit this on their Seamen's book. The other issue which we are having is several countries, they require 14 days quarantine of the seafarer prior him being able to get on board. So that becomes another logistical issue for us. And like I think Kuba mentioned earlier as well, these things are changing by the hour at times. So it's extremely dynamic. So we do have the support of the company and our owners, and I think we need more support from the administration to work on seafarers as key workers, and allow them the same sort of privileges of travel as for the airlines and the others. Just to add, I was having this discussion with my daughter about key workers, and we have these things about what is a need and what is a wish, and people who meet your needs are key workers, like the doctors, yes, nurses, yes, seafarers, definitely yes, you need them, and the others can be non-essential, right? So I mean, yes, there is still a lot to be done in terms of getting movement to our seafarers.
Okay, thank you very much. Kuba, you wanted to add to the conversation.
Yeah, I wanted to come back on myself a bit, and hearing what Vikrant was saying, actually, I'm thinking about Philippines. I was in a webinar this morning UK webinar for Philippines afternoon. And what I heard made me think, there is only 1,200 passengers allowed to go through Manila airport. We cannot monopolize that. Even if it was 1,200 seafarers, which is not, then we would have a problem, because that's only, if you multiply by 30, there will be 30,000 seafarers. And we need 40,000 seafarers from Manila to go out every month. Now, there is a lot of other Filipinos coming back, so it's half of them would be only seafarers. That's where the problem is. The same was in India. India was locked. Indian seafarers were not allowed out or in. Now we've got a very bad news from Sri Lanka yesterday, because 11 seafarers proved positive on COVID, and Sri Lanka closed everything. And a lot of ships are actually deviated to go to Gala to do the crew changes. Now they learn a lesson, it won't be happening. So as you can see, Vikrant, you are absolutely right. We are in an extremely dynamic situation. I was checking my phone when you were speaking, because there is another message now coming about Turkish seafarers stuck in US because the ship is supposed to leave before they can fly out. All these things we are dealing with. But as I said, ship managers are ex-seafarers. There is a problem, we've got a solution for it, and we will definitely solve it. I will have 22 minutes now, and then I'll be off and trying to solve it as well, I suppose. Thank you. Okay, well, it seems to me that part of the message that we're sharing here is that the sort of catchphrase of seafarers as key workers is not resonating with some of the key stakeholders in finding solutions for us. So it's a message that we do need to continue to press. Gillian.
Just one point on that. It's very interesting. One of my interviews, I think I released it about 4 days ago, was with Teresa Lloyd, who's CEO of Maritime Industry Australia Limited. And she was saying that there's this concept of key workers is not actually recognized across the board. So what is a key worker? And is it actually even providing them, if you declare someone as a key worker, does it actually provide them with the ability to travel? And, we have this issue in some countries such as Australia, where we even have our borders closed internally. So if you are arriving in Queensland and you want to go to WA, you might have to, even in Sydney or Melbourne, quarantine 14 days. Then to be able to go to WA, to Western Australia, you have to quarantine again another 14 days because of the internal border closures. So it's a very much a challenge. But what is a key worker? And I think Vikrant had a really good term on that. But now we know we're key workers. How can we actually get that to mean something, to provide seafarers with the ability to do the transits and the traveling and the visas, trying to get visas when offices are closed. So it's a big challenge. It's a challenge at the best of times to do these crew changes, but they do happen. But now you're trying to do crew changes when offices are closed and you can't get visas. There's no commercial flights. There's limited ability to transfer between border closures. So it is a challenge, and as seafarers, as Kuba says, you work to find solutions. Always look to find solutions.
We've spoken at the moment about those people finding it hard to get off the ships and the constraints there. But Deirdre, you meet quite a few people during their time at the National Maritime College in Ireland. And I just wonder, are you being exposed at all to the other side of the coin of people who actually are stuck at home and can't get to doing their job? And if so, what has been your exposure to that?
Thanks, John. Yes, from speaking to fellow seafarers, same issues. They're at home, they can't get back to the ship, or else before they join their ship, they have to self-isolate in a hotel for a week before. So they've lost a week of their leave, and it's absolutely grim. Stuck in a hotel room, email off what you want for dinner, and the food is just left at the door. And that's before they've even started their tour of duty. And then the flip side is those that are stuck on board long beyond when they should have gotten off. And the other worry is those that might not have a ship to get back to. They need to start their contract, they need money, and they can't get back to their ship. The other big issue is around the area of cadets. And it's a huge area of uncertainty, and our cadets are the future of our industry. And many companies they don't want the added risk of carrying cadets right now, so they're actually not taking cadets. Some cadets who were on board when this happened have opted to stay on in order to get all their sea time in, because of the uncertainty that they may not be able to get on another ship further down the road. Then you also have huge concerns amongst those that are finished their sea phase, and they finally want to gain their well-earned COC, but they're concerned about how they will complete the college phase of the work. So huge level of uncertainty amongst those cadets and stuff. Again, we've spoken about technology earlier on. Perhaps now is the time, let's really open up this debate to look at alternative options for online training for the non-practical element.
Well, that was, and thank you for that. And Nick, I'd like to draw on your experience there, because I think for most of us, we either had our training in college, or we had our professional development and support and training on board the ship, and they were complementary. But that self-driven learning was patchy, I suppose. But in today's environment, it's increasingly important, surely. And what has been your exposure to how people are having the opportunity to either learn for certificates of competency or to engage in continuing professional development through alternative means?
Yeah, the cruise industry itself had, after the Costa Concordia, had a huge wake-up call on bridge management training and operations, and I think we've documented that very well in Seaways. We got to the stage Carnival Corporation set up its own training college in Amsterdam. Obviously, none of us can get out there at the moment, and we've got quite a lot of seafarers stuck at home. So in my own organisation, we've set up electronic training, distance training, to twice a week, once on Monday and Thursday. Monday we have a video presentation, and then on Thursday we have a webinar with a live lecturer teaching, and then a self-test afterwards. And we're covering all sorts of subjects, and so we're keeping our sort of professional competence up to speed. We also have a webinar once a week with our online manager for all the captains and staff captains and officers at home. They also do that for all the deck officers, and the engineering teams are also having a call once a week. So we're kept up to date. And then every 2 weeks, we get a senior management webinar, which updates us on the whole company's response. So possibly we're slightly more catered for than others, but they are looking after us. But wherever you're stuck at sea or stuck at home, you still have this worry in the back of your head. Am I going to be around next month or whatever? Is there a ship for me to go to? And when I get off my ship, if I'm stuck out there, at the end of a bit of leave, am I going to have a ship to go out to? So we're all got this at the back of our minds, even though we're at home and theoretically comfortable and not out there. We're worried, are we going to have a job at the end of the month? And everybody's talking about new bookings and everything for next year and the year after, same with cargoes and everything. But are we going to survive this period to get there. I mean, we hear today that Qantas laid off 6,000 crew members. Emirates has done the same. And so, you know, when does it stop and how are we going to get back to operating? But again, I don't want to be too doom and gloom, and we're training and keeping ourselves updated for the future. And as everybody said, there is a future out there, and we just need to get through this the best way we can, with everybody working to get people moving in the right place, so that when we can pick up again, we do so running as opposed to coming from a dead stop. And that's what we want to do: keep walking, keep training, so we can run into the future. As I've said, you know, use this as a springboard to a better maritime industry with greater awareness from everybody else. And that's where the Seafarer today comes in, that people are aware of what we're doing, so that when we go back, we're more visible.
Thank you for that. I think what's been clear here is that the seafarers are key workers is something we need to continue to press with as strongly as we can. And I know that my colleagues in the Nautical Institute and in the branches and globally, we've been very engaged with our local authorities. We've been engaged with international media like the BBC. I'm sure that part of that effort will have filtered through to the coverage that was mentioned before in The Economist. But we mustn't step off the gas, and for all the hundreds of people who register today, please be part of that message. We need the global lobby to help us find solutions to persuade those stakeholders that are supporting key workers that they regard in nursing and doctors, and of course they're key workers, but it goes right across the community. It is shop workers, it is leisure staff, it is people supporting the infrastructure of our society, of which mariners are not sufficiently visible, but together we can help have a louder voice and a clearer voice. So we look forward to engaging that. There's another action which I didn't get to earlier on, which was about developments in the last few days, and that was the declaration by the Panama registry extending contracts by a further 3 months. It's had, shall we say, mixed reviews across the community, where well, nobody has to follow the extension, but Kuba, what do you think is going to be the impact of that?
Yes, well, I'll call a spade a spade. If you kick a can down the road, it becomes a barrel, and then it explodes. And I'm afraid that's what Panama is trying to do at the moment. We have to put the pressure where we know the pressure will work. And extending contracts any further is not helping, I'm afraid. It solves the issue, maybe, in some areas. We all look at the 6 pictures here telling you, we all appreciate the fact that we have to do crew changes now. If you go on our website, Intermanager, click on this link I told you earlier on, you will see how graph of crew due to be replaced and crew being replaced is actually diverging. It's not converging, and that's our problem. We have to start catching up. Extending another 3 months, what will happen in 3 months' time? It will be even worse problem for us. So let's face the music now. Let's do it. We are close. We know which countries are dragging their heels. We know which countries are very good. We can pass the best practice from one country to the other. Tell them that this is happening. This is how it works. And that's our role, I suppose. The role of those who are higher up in senior management and are able to reach that. And that's, rest assured, IMO, ICS, Intertanko, Intercargo, Intermanager, BIMCO, we all doing that on your behalf, of Seafarers' behalf. ITF is there with us hand to hand. And that's good. That's what we need to do. And Nautical Institute provides the feedback directly from the shopping floor, from the seafarers. That's the role. And I think, so I'm not enthused, and happy with Panama approach, I'm afraid. It's okay, I appreciate what they are trying to do, but I think working together with us who are really solving the problem would be better. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We have this strange tension. We have technology which is increasing and allowing things like remote surveys, and I'm going to come to Gillian on that in a minute, but also seafaring as a community and those personal interactions between our mariners from different cultures, different nationalities, different ethnic origins and so on is an important part of the fabric of society. But Gillian, where do you see this leading in terms of the short term and the ability to use technology to help with some of today's problems, but in the longer term as well, and that important social dimension for the future?
That's a really good, probably very all-encompassing question. So the role of technology and the opportunity to have this engagement is definitely there, and we have this discussion already now that's already happening where we've got this new terminology of Zooming, and we do GoToMeetings and Teams. You mentioned about remote surveys. So there are some remote surveys that are being able to be done, and this ability to have that connection, but there are some things that just can't seem to be done effectively in the remote survey concept. So it's really interesting, as you say, this dichotomy almost of technology that can help us on one hand, but we need to have that human interaction on the other hand. And when we're looking to see how we can use technology better, I think one of the things we can do with that is also to help it with our diversity and our inclusion concepts. So we're able to have more access to information in a diverse at the globe. So the globe is at your fingertips through the technology you have, and you can work on including that in. And looking to the future, how is this all going to meld together? We have some other industries we can start looking at, and we can see where technology has transformed, for example, during COVID-19 schooling. And in most areas of the world, we had homeschooling with the computer, and the school was being brought into you by technology. But yet we still had children who were feeling very left out, and you aren't going to capture everyone. So I don't think there's any one easy solution to this, but we can make best use of technology, using that to enhance diversity and inclusion. And you mentioned about the different crews that we have that we work with, and looking to the future where we start marrying technology more seamlessly into our activities. And there may be some things that we can learn from this one where there will be some changes. Electronic certificates were already coming. Now they've come much faster because it makes very good sense to do so. So things that we were already in the process of doing, single window, the FAL came up with that in 2010. So we can actually start seeing some action because the capabilities are there now. It's not that we're doing anything really different. It's almost a springboard. It is as Nick said, it's that springboard. It's that opportunity to start pivoting. It seems to be a term they're using now, isn't it? Very good for us, the pivot point. But we're pivoting our industry and our work. And this is an opportunity, I think, to engage with a wide variety of expertise and not, again, go outside of our echo chamber and start thinking outside of the box to solve these problems. And technology is one way to help do that.
Thank you, Gillian. And technology, of course, at the moment is providing a lifeline of communications between our seafarers and their homes. And we'd be very pleased to be part of the conversation with the leading satellite communications providers, understanding what they're doing to improve the offerings on board. Of course, they go through their individual contracts, but I think what we've tried to do there is to influence the discussion a little bit and make sure from an awareness point of view that our community, through my member messages and so on, that our community is aware of those developments and what's been put in place for them. Vikram, just coming back to you, it seems to me that these are really trying times and in many levels, and I know that there are people working ashore to do the best they can, but in many instances it seems to me that the ship's master, already heavily burdened with responsibilities and administration, all that goes to the normal day job, but right now there are welfare issues for the ship's master to look after in a different scale perhaps. And I just wonder from your perspective, either from the Nautical Institute or from your company, where does this sit in terms of mentoring and additional support? What is it that we can do?
Well, the great thing about the merchant service is that we just get on with the job. We may not have had the training to do it. Nobody could have trained for COVID-19. It's not in any manual. We haven't got a ship manual of how to deal with COVID-19. We've got our experience, but in 30 years at sea, or coming up actually 44 years of sea, I've never seen anything like this. I mean, we were at the stage in the Second World War where ships were torpedoed and the crews were stopped being paid. We've moved on from there. But how we deal with this, we have human resource managers on board. The ships do have a direct line to our HR teams ashore, but on board they're managing it as far as I've been aware of. I mean, all the crew that are stuck on board have been put into guest cabins. They've got a balcony, they've got internet. We put extra films on board. We still luckily got an entertainment director on board our ships, and he's doing with a lot of feeding in from Los Angeles, our head office. They're feeding in more movies as much as they can. The entertainments are planned. They have movies under the stars with social distancing in the evening and things like that. So we're keeping people alive, but it doesn't make up for not being at home. We've tried to keep the internet running as best we can with the best feeds, but as Kuba said, it's not the best at sea. Each captains are trying to manage the situation as best they can. Again, some will be better than others, but there is a full team there, and we do have backup from ashore to try and keep people's morale high. The worst thing is that when we say to a few crew members, you're getting off tomorrow, we've planned, they've packed, they've gone through all the tests, we get them to the gangway, we get them in the launch, exorbitant prices, I must say, in Manila, and they go ashore and they get to the airport and then the flight's cancelled. Then they have to come back to the ship, they have to go into quarantine again, and then and this is what's happening in Manila with its own nationals. This is the worrying thing. It's not as if we're refugees trying to get into Manila. And this is where the captain really has to come on his own. And the captain of the Diamond Princess did so well and has been recorded, in fact, been given the Order of Merit from Italy for his actions, where he managed to keep the passengers and crew on message for the whole time the ship was in quarantine. And as I said earlier on, he called his crew the gladiators of the job. And that's where individuals do so well. And that's the real point of merchant service, and why people actually want to go to sea is because you can be an individual still at sea. And it's up to you how you control your ship and how you get your enthusiasm and hope for the future. They always say seafarers are the last of the Elizabethans. We're the people that go across the ocean at bicycle pace, affected by the wind and weather. And that's why we come to sea, and that's why we should celebrate the Seafarers' Day.
Well, that's a little bit different from the message of tomorrow from Gillian. But Vikram, from your point of view, would you like to complement that? And are there any particular safety concerns that you might add?
Yeah, I mean, primarily we are dealing with humans, right? So and each person reacts differently to let's say to this to COVID-19. But on the whole, I think we are extremely proud of how our seafarers have managed the situation, have done their duties, taken that extra stride. Like Nick mentioned as well, it's not in a training manual, but they have invented solutions. And I have a cutting from the South China Morning Post. I don't know if it's visible here. This is one of the ships where I will read out what it says. We stand united to serve the world, COVID-19. So that's the morale on the ship. I mean, and it's up to the seafarers, to the master and to the others to collectively feel responsible for that supply chain, and a lot of them are, and it's very heartening how the seafarers have taken this on upon themselves to do things. Having said that, we almost on a daily basis engage with all our ships, and also talk to them and see where maybe some support is needed, and that's an individual thing which we have to, because we are dealing with different people. So it's a combination of things that taking care of their families ashore, because at times something might be happening back home which is worrying them. So if as managers we take care of that, it eases off their anxiety on board. So it's a combination of things that we need to do to manage the situation here.
Listen, thank you very much, and thank you for that uplifting perspective of those people maintaining good heart, maintaining their commitment, maintaining their professionalism. Like all good passage plans, we should have an ETD and we should have an ETA. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. Thank you so much for your insights. I appreciate the time and commitment that you've given to the discussion, and we look forward to your continued and ongoing support. Thank you very much indeed.
John, this is David. Just a couple of final housekeeping notes. We've had hundreds of questions. We've tried to get to as many as possible, but I'm sorry if we haven't got to yours. This webinar has been recorded, and it will be on the Nautical Institute YouTube channel probably by tomorrow. And a lot of people have asked how many people have been participating, and we've had over 500. So that's it for the housekeeping notes, John.
David, thank you very much to you and the technical team for keeping us on track. To all of you for calling in and joining into the webinar, please give us your feedback and write to us as well. We're all keen to find the best ways forward, but a special thanks to the panel, to Nick, Gillian, Vikrant, Deirdre and Kuba. Your input's very much appreciated. Thank you.
And a final thank you to David. He kept his job.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. So can I just remind the panelists to log off, please, and then we'll close the meeting. Thank you.